Yo, what's poppin', everybody? This is your boy DezDaKinG, and we back with another edition, another episode of the King Talk TV podcast. I believe this is episode number 56, so we moving on up there. I have a special guest coming to the show today, my man Ben Walker, BJJ black belt, former world champion. He's an architect out there in California, and he has some strong political views as well. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about politics, BJJ, and just stuff that's going on in this crazy world we live in. So should be a fun conversation, and it's going to be great. So if you're watching this live, leave a comment below in the comment section so I can shout you out. Let me know where you're from. If you're watching this on YouTube, consider giving this a like, subscribing, and comment below your thoughts on this show today. Let me know how you feel about whatever we talk about. And I had him on last year. You can check that out. I'll link that episode below as well. And we had a great conversation. So I'm going to bring him on now as soon as he jumps on, and we're going to get this show on the road. What's up, man?
What's up, bro? How you doing?
Long time, bro. How are you?
It's been a little bit. I'm doing good. Everything is, we had a little bit of cold weather, even though it's Southern California and Los Angeles. It was down in the 50s, which is traumatic. So now it's back up to the mid 70s and everything's fine again.
Well, it's better than the whole state burning down, right? I'll be having like a lot of fire issues out there.
We get a lot of fires. We get a lot of floods. You know, California's a desert. Los Angeles is a desert. And so when we get a lot of rain, it just erodes things. You know, it doesn't soak in. We don't have good soil. So we get a lot of erosion, and trees fall down, and mudslides, and it rips out everything and kills everything. Then we get fires that wipes everything else out. Then the fires degrade all the tree roots, and so then when the mudslides happen, it just goes on. It's forever. It's a perpetual thing. It's just how it goes in California.
So tell me again, Ben, why are you still in California? Why haven't you moved to the lovely state of Colorado yet?
Well, I don't know about Colorado, but I'm mainly here because I live here, and moving is a pain. You know, we have to pack everything up, and now especially logistically from California, it's real expensive because everybody leaves. And so all of the U-Hauls and everything leave California and they don't come back. And so if you want to take a U-Haul from Los Angeles to Colorado, it's probably $5,000. But if you want to take a U-Haul from Colorado to Los Angeles, it's $400 because they want the trucks back. So even just moving here is way more expensive because there's no more moving trucks. You have to hire a private truck to do it for you. So even that, it's difficult.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's difficult to stay there and it's difficult to leave.
Yeah, it's difficult to stay here. I mean, California's got a lot of good things going for it, right? We have beautiful weather. You know, if you want the beach is right there. If you want the snow, it's 30 minutes away. If you want the desert, I mean, we have everything. We've got great food, tons of entertainment, but, you know, there's also a lot of problems. Obviously, everybody knows about Los Angeles and all of our problems in California as a whole, but it's got a lot of things going for it. It's a great place except for the things that are horrible here.
What's some of the things that are horrible besides the weather? What's one pressing thing that's horrible to you or going on?
Yeah, so even like non-politically, we pay a lot in taxes. You know, our gas tax is higher than anybody else's in the country. Our income tax is really high. Our property taxes are really high. We pay a whole lot in taxes, but we don't get a lot for it. And so our roads, you know, I just blew up a tire on a pothole in Los Angeles and had to buy a new tire and a new rim because our roads fall apart. Even though we pay so much money in gas tax, which fixes the roads don't get fixed. And so the money goes into funds and then it gets proportioned out to things that don't really help, you know, the normal person, the average person, you know, in California. So that's one of them, really high taxes, and you don't get anything, you know, for your money. Other than that, we have, you know, California is very susceptible to popular opinions. And so a popular opinion doesn't have to be logically sound or important or even feasible, but if a lot of people want it, California wants to try to put that in into play. And so it kind of depends on who's the loudest at any current time. They try to implement some pretty crazy stuff. So we have propositions. And so the government says, hey, we want to do this thing. It's Proposition 43, 76, whatever it is. And then if the people vote on it, then they can put it into play, because the government, in theory, can't just make their own rules, right? It's a republic, so we have to vote on it. So we had one a couple of years ago where California wanted to make it possible to hire people based on their race. So in our Constitution of California, it says you can't discriminate on people based on their race, their religion, their sexual orientation, normal things. You have to treat people normally, and you can't pick or choose who's better than anybody else, just as we'd hope that it would be, right? Everybody has an equal shot. But California wanted to do away with that. They wanted to be able to hire people based on race so they could hire certain people and not hire other people. And that almost passed in California. The voters almost approved that you could then hire based on people's race solely, or based on their sexual orientation, or based on their anything. That almost passed in California. So it's a wild place. It's a wild place.
Hire some people and not hire other people?
Right. So let's say that you work for a corporation and you only want to hire women. I only want women. Well, you can't do that. Just like you can't say I only want to hire white men, or I only want to hire black women. You can't hire people based on their race or their sex, right? It's against the law. It's against federal law. It's against the state constitution. But they wanted to make it so people could do that, so businesses could do that, and so the government could do that. So the government could say, we have too many men in this department, and so we're going to stop hiring men and only hire women. Or we have too many of this race, and we don't want to hire them anymore, so we only want to hire these other people. And the people had to vote on that, and it got really close to passing, which is crazy, because right now the politics of that might be, we want to make sure that we can hire more black people here. We want more black people. There's not enough representation, so we want to make it so we don't have to hire white people. We don't have to hire the best person for the job. We can just hire, black people or Indians or whatever it is. But they forget that in 10 or 15 years, the climate might change. And then it might be someone saying, hey, we're only going to hire white people. We're only going to hire Christians. We're only going to hire this. We're not going to hire someone that doesn't believe in God. And they're so short-sighted that they don't understand that discrimination is discrimination, and it only suits you if it serves your people. But the better view is discrimination is wrong, and we don't do that. But that almost passed. So like 40% of the population of California thought that was a good idea, to discriminate on people based on their race. And it's a wild place. It's a wild place.
That is wild, bro.
Only in California. We literally had billboards advertised. It wasn't like a secret. Like if you or me devised some plan where we were going to discriminate based on race, like we would keep it a secret, right? We're like, oh, we don't really want them to know what this is about. Like we just hope people vote for it. But they're like, no, we want to be able to change it so we can, discriminate based on race in California. We want to change our constitution that no longer makes discrimination illegal.
Gosh, man. That's so backwards, man.
Yeah. Crazy. It's crazy.
I don't know if this is going on in your area, but I think it's San Francisco. They want to give or propose something to give black people like $1 million or something. Did you hear about that? It's
a lot more than that. So they always float around reparations. And honestly, I don't think it will ever go anywhere. I don't think it can. But it's very popular amongst a lot of people. I mean, honestly, if someone's like, hey, we want to give you $5 million. I'd be like, okay, well, that sounds fine. I like $5 million. That sounds good. So it's not wrong for people to want that. If you want to give me something for free, then that maybe doesn't hurt anybody. I want that. But they want, the latest was $5 million per black person plus housing. You get to buy a house for $1. So you get any house that's on the market for $1. Plus you get, I think it was $275 annually for life.
Wow.
If you're black. But the crazy thing is, and this is reparations for slavery. California was never a slave state. There was never a single slave in California. There was never a single slave owner in California. Nobody in California currently was ever a slave, and neither were their parents. And so it's not as if you're actually writing something to the right people. Nobody here is a slave. They never were a slave. Their parents weren't slaves. Slavery was never legal in California. There were never any slaveholders in California. And so presumably the money would be taken from taxes. And so my tax money or your tax money, if you live in California, would be paying people in a state that there were never slaves and there were never any slaveholders. And so why do we penalize people and take their money to pay for something that never existed here? But obviously there's people that'll say, yeah, I'm owed that. You know, my existence is so hard. It's because of the rigors of slavery that, you know, my life is poor today. And so you have to give me money. But yeah, that's a real thing. It happens every year. It's never passed, but every year they hit on it really hard. And you can go to, you know, college campuses, and there'll certainly be people that are for it, you know, kids that are for it. They think they deserve it.
Do you think eventually it will pass? Like, what do you see it going in the next few years?
I don't think it can. I think that even, you know, a lot of our politicians say, you know, they're pro this, pro that, you know, they want to give people whatever they want. When it comes down to it, they know that it's not possible. And so they did the math on it. And the math was it would cost like $1.9 trillion, trillion with a T. There is no way that we can pay $1.9 trillion for anything. It doesn't exist. And so you can't even do it. And so it's make-believe fantasy land. But, you know, it's another one of those things. Like, I don't blame people for being like, yeah, I'd take $5 million. You take $5 million. Like, hey, we want to give you $5 million because your name starts with a D. You'd be like, yeah, well, that sounds great, man. I'll take it. Right? No big deal. No big deal.
That is ridiculous, man. And the fact that people go for that, I guess my question for you is this. What role does the media have in all this? Are they really, really pressing this? Is it the people pressing for this, or is it the media pressing it on the people and the politicians kind of just piggybacking on what the media
I think the media isn't really pressing for it. They certainly give it exposure. I mean, as they should. It's an important thing, right? They should talk about it. But it's really politicians. Some of them feel like they're legitimately owed it. You know, they deserve $5 million and a $1 house and $275 annually based on something they can't control, the color of their skin when they're born. But I think it more appeals to people who feel they are victims, and then they get politicians, you know, the representatives that also believe it. And so then, you know, they want to fight for this. Their politicians want to get reelected, so they say they're going for this. And then if they also, you know, happen to be black and it passes, like, that's great. You know, $5 million for me, why wouldn't I want that as well? But it's not a real thing, and it never will be a real thing. It's not feasible. It's ridiculous. It's fantasy land. You know, the people that are legitimately for this, we make fun of them. You know, it's stupid. It's the dumbest thing ever. It'd be like, the Irish were enslaved for a long time, longer, you know, than most other races. They were slaves in America. They were slaves everywhere. And it's like them saying, hey, we want to get paid for all of this, you know, 200 years later, and we want, you know, our own country to pay for it. And they'd be like, no, like, you know, that sucks. Every race was enslaved at some point. Slavery is awful. It's a horrible, dehumanizing thing. As a society, most countries have moved past this a long time ago. And so it kind of is what it is. And we're all good now. We all have equal rights. We're all protected by the law equally. You know, we legitimately, except for in California where they wanted to discriminate based on race, that was defeated barely. You know, you can't do that anymore. It's against the law. You know, it's against the law. And you will get chokeslammed by the government if you try. So it never goes anywhere. It's a joke. We laugh at them. We think they're stupid. And, you know, I don't think it'll ever go anywhere.
You would think they know this, though. I mean, people are smart. I mean, there are people who are dumb, but people are smart, though. And you would think that those representatives know this. So to me, it seems like it's virtue signaling. Like they're just trying to distract you from something else.
They're playing the people. They're playing the people for votes. You know, they certainly, you know, the more popular they are, the more donations they get, you know, to their campaign funds. You know, the more companies that want to give them money to, you know, have them side with them. But yeah, it's like, you know, it's like 23-year-old college students that don't understand how the world works, thinking that this could actually happen. And so they fight for it. There's no pathway for it to happen. The money does not exist. Like, oh, we'll just get more money. Like, that's not how it works. Oh, we'll just tax people more. They'll leave California. We're already all leaving California, you know. There's only so much people are willing to take. Oh, you know, Coca-Cola, the company, has so much money. We'll just take their money. They'll stop working. Everyone will lose their job and you'll have nothing. And then there'll be, you know, 40,000 people out of employment. Like, it doesn't work that way. And so they just don't understand how the world works. And they're just greedy and selfish and want, you know, whatever they can get. And that's part of, you know, the human condition. You know, we all have a selfish side to us. We're all human, you know, so. But some people just take it too far and then add on top of it, you know, maybe they feel slighted by society. You know, I'm treated poorly not because I'm not smart or because I act, you know, unprofessionally, I'm treated poorly because of my skin color. And so everybody owes me, you know, I can't change this. And so I need to be paid for this.
What are your thoughts on, because, okay, like you said, the money doesn't exist. We can't get X amount of dollars just out of nowhere. But what are your thoughts on all this money that's going to Ukraine every few months, it seems like? It seems like we sent them almost $1 trillion. I mean, not really, but we're sending billions, millions and billions of dollars.
So Ukraine has a couple different sides to it. Like, number one, Ukraine as like a political organization isn't really worthy of our money. But Ukraine was producing nuclear weapons, and we got Ukraine to give up their nuclear weapons, and we promised them that we would keep them safe, because part of the reason why Ukraine wanted nuclear weapons was to protect them against Russia. And that's a really good deterrent. I mean, that's why all countries have nuclear weapons, not necessarily to use them, but for the threat of I can use them. And so when we brokered that deal with Ukraine, we told them that we would keep them safe. And then Russia invaded. And now they don't have nuclear weapons, and part of the reason they were invaded was because they don't have nuclear weapons. And so now we're on the line with that. But, you know, our government also doesn't want a war with Russia. We don't want an actual war with Russia. We'll do proxy wars. You know, we always do proxy wars with other countries, overthrow their leadership or pump up guerrillas, you know, to fight them and stuff like that. But we don't want to send, we do that all the time. We've done that with every government there is, right? And I don't even know if it's always bad, but it's certainly something we do. We actively overthrow other governments in proxy wars all the time. We always have. And so on one hand, we have to protect them, or we should, because we said we would. And the reason why they're getting invaded is because we got them to give up their nuclear weapons. But on the other hand, we're giving them a lot of money. And there are probably better ways to do that. And just like our whole deal with why we shouldn't really like NATO as an organization is we give them so much and they do so little for us. Right. And so it would be really nice if Poland and Hungary and all the other countries that surround Ukraine said, hey, we've had enough of Russia too, you know, come over and let's see what's up. You know, all they need to do is just put their troops inside of Ukraine and say, hey, our troops are in here, they're in this city. If you touch our troops, then we're going to have war. And that's all it would take. And Russia would have to go, do we really want war with all of, you know, Western Europe? And the answer would be no. You know, Russia's already played their hand with all their troops, and they saw that while the Ukrainians aren't worthless people, they're not a war-fighting culture, right? They're not the U.S. Navy SEALs. They're not the Polish Spec Ops, right? They have a military and they have special forces, but it's not like they are a hard-hitting military with the latest advancements. They destroyed the Russians. Ukrainians are killing Russians like 10-1. Russia has the entire country of Russia, and they're getting annihilated. And so Russia showed that they're not effective. They don't have what it takes. They don't even have the money for their current war, and they're getting destroyed by, you know, peasants. And, you know, that's what happens in guerrilla warfare. That happened with us in, you know, Vietnam, same sort of thing, right? Dudes in trees with machine guns taking out dozens of soldiers with guerrilla warfare. But Russia has shown that they're not good at wars. And so the other countries in Europe, the neighboring countries, they're the ones that need to step in, not us. Because Ukraine has nothing to do with us. And we're only there because of an obligation that we probably shouldn't have made in the first place. So we do owe them something. We do owe to help them with their security, with their safety, because we took from them to make them give up their nuclear weapons. However, we're paying a lot for nothing. We don't get anything out of this. We don't need to weaken Russia. Russia's already weak. They're not a huge problem. They're, you know, a cyber criminal. They're a political criminal to us, but they're never going to come to America. No one's probably ever going to show up on our shores. Probably in our lifetime, no country's ever going to invade us. It would be suicide, right? There's me and you here, right? Me and you, we have arsenals. We have friends, right? How many of our friends were in the military, right? You can't, our country is so vast. Our shoreline is so spread out. We have so many mountainous regions. You can't conquer our country. It would cost you everything. You know, it'd have to be a legitimate world war if everybody teams up against America, and that's not going to happen because Mexico's not going to team up because they don't want to be invaded. Canada's not going to team up with them. They don't want to be invaded. So we have Mexico, Canada, and America as a united front. We could take everybody. You know, they can send over 10,000 nuclear bombs and blast us into oblivion, but that would destroy the world anyway, so it doesn't matter. You know, there'd be no prize. There'd be no booty to collect after that. And so we need to help Ukraine somehow, but we sure are paying a lot of money for something that we could be spending on ourselves that we don't. We could be saving every veteran there is, right? We could be hardening every school, could have an armed security guard to make sure that crazy people can't go shoot kids anymore. You know, we could fix literally almost everything with that amount of money. But, you know, Ukraine is a pretty pressing need. We don't like to see countries invaded and innocent people killed. You know, it's really depressing. But it's really a job for the rest of Europe and not for us. You know, we shouldn't be, you know, Big Daddy, protect the whole world. You know, Team America, world police. You know, that shouldn't be our job. We're just the best people at it, and we're the only ones willing to do it.
The balance of power is shifting, though. Don't you think? Don't you think it's going towards China in the next?
The perceived balance of power, and so you get a bunch of big giant countries together, and they say, "Oh, we're in charge." That's cool. It doesn't mean anything. You know, we can, if we wanted, if America wanted to, we can be energy independent again. We can produce our own oil and gas. We don't need coal from China. We don't need almost anything except for some minerals from some places around the world. But all those other countries will vanish if America vanishes. China will go out of business as an existence if Americans stop buying Chinese goods. That'll be the end of them. That'll be it. They will literally implode, and they'll, you know, Chinese has kind of a fake economy anyways, where they fudge the numbers, and so who knows how much in debt they are. You know, they say they have zero debt every year. Their money doesn't really mean anything. You know, it's fake currency, so it doesn't matter. But if we stopped buying from China, they would cease to exist. They would all starve to death. It would be mass chaos. The world would end. You know, if China dies, you know, kind of the whole world does too. But as Americans, we're fine. We're fine. We're self-sufficient. We don't need them. We have vast resources. We grow enough food for ourselves. It would be like not a good existence like we have now, but we would be okay. And so when it comes down to it, you know, we are far more resource rich than a lot of other places, and we'll end up okay. But Russia is now saying that they're going to start using the Chinese currency to start funding their stuff. They didn't really use the US dollar that much anyways. That's fine. Russia is already embargoed into oblivion. You know, they're gonna crater as a society. There's so many sanctions on them. When they stop producing, when they stop sending out any more natural gas and oil, they're going to have another collapse just like the USSR did. China's been on their way down for a whole long time. You know, the only thing that's keeping them up is, you know, the goods that they ship out and some of their raw materials, electronic devices, stuff like that. But, you know, your iPhone is from China, but the Samsung is from South Korea. And the Samsung's a good phone. You know, people like an iPhone over a Samsung because they like the brand better. The technology is virtually identical, right? The interface is different. It's the same thing. There's so many alternatives to, you know, the Chinese-based things that they're just the cheapest right now. And we can do without it. We don't need it. And so China and Russia can align. They can start making it hard for some other places, but ultimately they're going to fail because they're, you know, socialist communist countries, and they always fail. They never survive. They never make it. And so they're just kind of on the way out, and that's why Russia's been trying to take parts of Ukraine. Ukraine is a massive, you know, grain-producing country. You know, they feed almost all of Europe with their wheat, and so they want a piece of that. And if that doesn't work out, and they have to go back to the drawing board where they don't have anything anymore, you know, it just gets more dire and dire for them.
So, what do you see happening over there in the Eastern Hemisphere as far as this war, Ukraine, Russia, China? Who comes out on top over there after all this? Or when do you see this war ending, in your opinion?
I think Russia is kind of too big to fail. And I don't think all the other countries are really going to hurt them enough to, like, wreck them. They're going to hurt them enough to maybe make them stop, and then they're only going to keep, like, the new 20 miles of border that they seized. And they're going to stop there. But I don't think anybody really has a taste for World War III, because that's what it would be. And that's why you have countries that are, you know, abstaining from voting. They don't want to call, you know, Putin a war criminal. They just want to kind of stay hands off of it and just see what happens. The Ukrainian people, like, aren't super relatable to the rest of the world. You know, like if someone attacks Israel, you know, it's pretty relatable when you think about, you know, the Holocaust, the genocide. Or when somebody attacks Armenia, you know, it's pretty relatable. Like, all these people have had, you know, historical hardships. But as far as, you know, Ukraine goes, people are just like, meh. They're just like, you know, they used to be Russians. And so people don't really care that much. But all those people that border Russia should understand, you know, the great danger that Russia is. But they're kind of staying hands off of it because they don't want a war. But I think the more that Russia loses, and the more that, you know, their tanks get blown up by a drone with a grenade that costs $1, the more they might start getting on board. But I don't think there's ever going to be an invasion of Russia because that has never succeeded in the history of the world. It's been tried many times, right? More Nazis died invading Russia than American plus France killed altogether. And so, you know, you can't invade Russia. It's a disaster. And so you just kind of have to embargo and tax them to death to make them stop, like we did in the Cold War. But I think them and China are going to form an alliance. They're going to try to keep their countries both going a little bit better to work out for them. But they're just kind of going to drift off back into the, you know, sort of third world countries that they were that are barely making it.
Yeah, well, I hope that overall, I hope it ends well as it can, because a lot of people are dying, like you said. Yeah. A lot of people are suffering.
Well, there's no well. I mean, the well would be like, oh, all the countries join up and then they defeat Russia in war. That's not good, right? How many Russian, you know, people are going to die? How many civilians are all going to starve to death? You know, it's not. There is no good. The good is just for Russia to stop and go home. You know, that's like the best I think that you can hope for.
Right. Transitioning back to the great USA, as you know, there's a lot of student loan debt out there. I'm not sure the dollar amount, but it's a lot. And there are people who want to have student loan debt forgiven across the board. I have a lot of student loan debt, and I wouldn't mind that happening, I guess, but I'm kind of in the fence of if that should happen or not. I feel like a part of me is like, well, we borrowed the money, we should probably pay for it. But then a part of me is like, I was young, didn't know really what I was signing up for. And if we just write all this off, I'm not sure how that's going to, I mean, the economy's already messed up, but writing off, you know, billions and billions of dollars just at the blink of an eye, I don't see that being good for the economy long term. But what are your thoughts on that?
It's really easy to find like somebody's political party based on how they feel on student debt, like what ultimately they would vote for. You know, it's easy to feel both things, but whatever you want, whichever side you're on is really telling about like who you are as a person, who you vote for. So on one hand, like how nice would it be to relieve everybody of that student debt? I mean, there's people that pay so much and they can't get ahead because they're behind on their bills, and it's going to follow them around for, 20 years. And it's stressful, and you can't get rid of it in bankruptcy. You can't dissolve it at all. It's such a problem. But on the other hand, you asked for it, and you signed for it, and you wanted it, and you accepted it, and you needed it, and you could have done a lot of other things, but that's what you chose. And so part of, getting the gifts in life is the responsibilities for the things that you have to do. And so in some cases, there were, like with some schools that went defunct, they gave people their money back, or there were predatory loans that they gave to young people who decided like the interest rate was too high, and the government dissolved those. But really what the student loan debt has come down to now is a political thing to try and entice people, to vote for your party, because you'll make sure they don't have to pay money, which is just giving them money. On the other hand, same with reparations, the same with, all that sort of stuff. You're a free phone, Obama gave people lots of phones, free healthcare, iPads, free TV, all sorts of stuff to try and, I guess, help people. But, it's a way to distinguish yourself, like, I will give you things. Because ultimately, we want our politicians to give us things. I want my politicians to give me, like, freedom, to be free of, like, incursion, to give me safety, those sort of things. But I don't really need any material goods. I can get those for myself, and I don't want those. But honestly, if a politician came and knocked on my door and said, hey, I guarantee you, if you vote for me and I win, I'll give you $3 million. That's $3 million, right? That's not bad. That's not bad. I mean, what else? What are the rest of the policies? Like, where else can I make some exceptions, right? And so they just buy people. That's all they're doing, is they're just buying it. And so that's what the student debt relief plan was. It's not feasible, and it's entirely unfair. It's super unfair to people that first didn't get student loans. So your local plumber, that went to plumbing trade school, that bought his truck, that bought all his tools, that paid, $50,000 for, all his equipment, then got his license and had to study for that. And now he works for himself, and he's a plumber doing, an honest day's job. He doesn't get any student debt relief because he doesn't have any. Why isn't he entitled to anything? I would think that he's more entitled to money than someone that got a degree in English literature that works at Starbucks, right? Like, are you going to tell me that person, just because they went to a 4-year university and they do nothing with that they're more deserving of money than the guy that actually, literally helps us all the time. That's more vital for the country. It's more vital for us and for our parents. And on the other hand, what about the people that did go to college and paid for their student loans? They spent that 30 years and paid for it. Why are they not getting anything? Not only that, they're now paying for those other people's student loans. So you have people that paid for their student loans that don't get anything, and their tax dollars are then funding people to get free money. Then you have people that didn't go at all, spent their own money for college, for their education to be a plumber, and now they have to pay for somebody's English lit degree that works at Starbucks, right? It's entirely unfair. It's arbitrary. It's not a good system. It's wrong. You know, it's not fair. It's wrong.
Either way, someone's not going to be happy. Whether that gets passed or not.
But one way you have people that agreed to do something that don't like the results of what they agreed to, that are unhappy. Like, yeah, that's sad. That's like, you know, you commit a crime and you go to jail, you're sad about it. And then you have people that didn't commit any crime that now have to pay for it that are sad. I'll side with the people that didn't do anything wrong, that took care of business, you know, versus the person that it didn't work out the way they wanted to. You know, for me, that's a pretty easy distinction.
Right. There's a comment here, Ben. Someone said that, what did they say? I think it's important to remember during the occupation of Poland, several Ukrainians fled the Soviets by joining the Nazis. I don't know if that's true or not. Maybe you have more information on that.
Well, I mean, we have Americans that fled to Germany to join the Nazi Party, right? Mm-hmm. Every country, somebody went to join the Nazi Party. The Japanese were considered honorary Nazis, right? And we destroyed them too when they attacked Pearl Harbor. But everywhere, every race is susceptible to a superiority complex of wanting to be on a winning side, even if it's evil. You know, we are surrounded by people without morality that'll do anything. If you had, you know, some other country joining, let's see, what could it be? Some crazy country attacking America, and if you joined their side, you got food. A lot of people are going to say, yeah, I would like to get food, right? That's what's most important to me, the safety of my family, the safety of my country. Then you also have people that are ideology on the same side. Like, no, I'm a Nazi. I think that, you know, Jews are horrible, and so I'm going to join that side because that's what I believe in. But as a country, I don't think there's any evidence in any way whatsoever that Ukrainians supported Nazis more than anywhere else. That's not a thing at all.
I don't know if you ever heard of the paperclip. I think it's called the paperclip scandal or the paperclip operation. But basically, after World War II, the U.S. government recruited Nazi scientists to work on, I think, nuclear weapons or weapons for us as well. So our own government. Yeah,
we got rocket propulsion from Nazi scientists. Well, we would just say German scientists. We don't necessarily know if those people were, you know, Jew-hating Germans. A lot of them were just scientists, and they got recruited and they wanted to build their cool stuff. But I mean, we got the turbine engine. We got a lot of technology for the nuclear weapons from the Germans. We got a whole bunch of stuff when we invaded them. And then we also gave a lot of that technology to Russia, which we shouldn't have. And that's why Russia got a leg up. But they were our ally during the time. And so we gave them information on the turbine engine, which is, you know, a major advancement in propulsion, and on nuclear weapons as well. But yeah, we benefited greatly from the prizes of war. You're now ours, and we are taking your technology. I mean, that's literally how war goes.
Crazy, man, crazy. A lot of this stuff is not taught, you know, in schools, especially about the paperclip scandal. I wanted to ask you this about, do you believe in climate change?
Oh, the climate, there's two things. Like, it's a very telling question. Do you believe in climate change? So anybody who doesn't think that climate changes is extremely ignorant. The issue is, are we changing the climate, and are we changing it in a way that's drastically different than the natural cycle? You know, so right now, you know, we are not in any, according to, you know, the graph of time for as far as we can go. And we're looking at, you know, like core samples from the ice and, you know, tree ring growth and other stuff. We didn't have, you know, a thermometer connected to a computer 10 million years ago, right? So we're kind of guessing. But we can definitely tell there were hot times and cold times. And we know that right now we are perfectly on trend with how the Earth has always gone. And so our greenhouse gases, you know, good for the environment. Well, to some degree, greenhouse gases grow trees and plants. You know, they need carbon dioxide. If we lower carbon dioxide, That produces less oxygen because the trees are producing those things for us. Do we destroy the environment as a species? Incredibly, right? We release toxic waste. You know, we pollute entire ecosystems. We destroy entire biospheres. We do terrible things. But to say that, you know, we are drastically changing the temperature of the planet, there's no conclusive evidence for that. There's people that will say yes, there's people that will say no. But we're talking about, you know, 3/4 of a degree, half a degree here. You know, they always say, you know, in 20 years, Los Angeles is going to be flooded. In 20 years, we're going to have uncontrollable tornadoes and hurricanes. And they've been saying that, you know, for 60 years now. And it hasn't happened. You know, we're going to run out of fossil fuels. They used to say that all the time. We're going to run out of gas. By the year 2000, you know, we're going to run out of gasoline. Well, we got more gas. We got plenty, right? We got tons. It's not going to happen. At some point, yes, it will run out, but not anytime soon. And so I think a lot of the green initiative and stuff like that, some of it is in good spirit, like cleaning up the ocean. Like there's no negative to cleaning up the ocean, right? Cleaning up trash from the ocean, there's no problem with that. But the things we do, like in California, is we say we're not going to use plastic straws anymore. Because one time there was a video of a turtle that had a plastic straw in his nose that they had to remove. And this is so sad. And so we banned plastic straws as a state. You can't use plastic straws anymore. And so we have these paper straws, and you put them in your drink, and your drink dissolves it, and it turns into goo, and you can't even use it anymore. But what they don't talk about is that as like Californians, we contribute to like 0.03% of the pollution in the ocean, whereas a country like India contributes like 40% of it. And so when you tell us, you know, tax us for this, try to do all these things to help save the ocean, we don't even do anything. Our money accomplishes absolutely zero on the grand scheme of things, but it costs us so much. Whereas India and China just throw their trash into the ocean. You know, nowhere in the United States we just throw our trash in the ocean as a people. Some people might throw their trash in the ocean, but no city does that, right? They just drive it out in a boat and dump it in the ocean. They would get sued into oblivion. You can't do that. But other countries do. They just throw it right in the river. Just take it out and let it go out to the ocean, no problem. So you get these, you know, giant trash slicks that are, you know, hundreds of miles long. But we spend all this money to try and solve this problem, but it's not our problem. We're not doing this. If you want to talk about pollution or global warming, you talk about China that has, you know, 1,000 coal-powered plants that just pollute nonstop. But one of the reasons why China has enough food and they have electricity is because of those coal plants. So how are you going to tell them, like, hey, what you're doing is bad for the environment, so you need to go back to extreme poverty? Thank you. Like, it doesn't work that way. And so you have to be realistic about who's actually polluting, right? It's not us. We're not doing it on some grand layer. Like, oh, we can always do more. Sure. But you shouldn't make me pay, you know, 75% more for my electricity to solve a problem that we're not even contributing to. This is not my problem. This is not our problem. This is someone else's problem. And everything we do doesn't even make a difference.
Because I could be mistaken, because then you guys out there trying to pass a law, or the politicians out there are really pushing for everyone to drive electric cars? Is that?
Yeah.
Is that?
So they passed something that says by the year, I think it's like 2030, you won't be able to sell gasoline vehicles anymore, only electric, which is, I mean, that's cool, whatever. You know, you want us to drive electric vehicles, that's fine. We don't have enough electricity in Los Angeles. We have blackouts all the time because we do not have enough electricity. And so we used to have, you know, nuclear power plants produce all our power. We had natural gas plants produce all our power. And they said, oh, that's not good for the environment. So now we're only doing wind and solar. And so now a lot of our power is wind and solar. Well, when it's nighttime, you don't get solar energy anymore. And when the wind's not blowing, the windmills don't turn and you don't get any power that way either. And so we have to ship in power from other places like Oregon. And then we don't have enough power. And so if we all have electric vehicles, or even more of us have electric vehicles that are plugged into the grid charging, we're going to have even more blackouts. We don't have enough electricity as it is. And so, you know, in Los Angeles during a hot day, it's 105 degrees here in the city. Everybody's using their air conditioner. Boom, power's out. Now you have 2 hours where you can't use anything electric. And so then you got, you know, your grandma at her house, 105 degrees, no air conditioner, refrigerator, no ice machine, no nothing anymore. And so you have people that die every year because our grid is so unreliable, and when it's hot, we run out of power. And so they want to double down on that by making sure that people can only use electric things. They also said that they want to get rid of gas appliances. So in most of California, our stoves are gas powered. And so in some states, they don't have gas, and so they're electric powered. But our heaters, our water heaters, our home heaters, our stoves, all those things are powered by natural gas. They want to get rid of that too because natural gas kills the environment, blah, 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 petroleum. We hate, big oil companies. And they know that we don't have the electricity to do it, but they don't care. And so they're just, zealots against fossil fuels, and they don't care that this is actually going to hurt us a lot. And people actually die every year. People literally die every year because of these policies, but they want to force us into, more electrical appliances because it sounds good. And there's some part of the population that says, yeah, this is what we need to do for Mother Earth. And if people die because of it, I don't care anyways, because it's a better thing to do for, the planet or some nonsense.
It's crazy, man. And the crazy thing about that, Teslas or electric cars in general are made from lithium batteries. It takes CO-operated machines to build lithium batteries. It's not like something we could just build and lower our carbon, lower the carbon footprint.
So if you wanted to be like more carbon neutral, when you factor in, what it takes to produce a Tesla or any electric car, what it takes to ship it over, what it costs to maintain it, what it takes to charge it up all the time, you have to own that electric vehicle for like 60 years before it offsets, the damage that it does to the environment through mining, through producing the electricity, through fossil fuels and all that stuff. Whereas if you bought, a $15,000 budget Honda Civic, you break even real quick, right? Real quick. The gas is cheap. You're getting a lot of bang for your buck. There's not a lot of, volatile chemicals in that car. And after, 15 years, like you're pretty good, you've offset that. And then someone else is going to buy it, and they're going to get that value as well. And then when you take it to the dump and, break it, well, you've got a battery that has lead and acid in it. To some degree, you have like the coolant in it, which is kind of an environmental hazard, or the brake fluid or something like that. But when you talk about an electric vehicle, you have all those batteries, and those things are there forever, and they're poison for the environment, and it's forever. And it took so much to produce it, and you're using electricity that is produced by fossil fuels and shipping it over on a boat, and it's all these things, and nobody is honest enough to admit the damage that they do. But it's the idea of, oh, this runs on electricity. This runs on electricity, therefore it's better. Okay, well, you have to drive it for 50 years. Let me know how well that electric vehicle does in 50 years. That thing won't even move, right? It won't even come close. It's going to make it, 20 years max, right? And then you're going to have to get a new battery pack, and you just reset the clock again. And so from that aspect, it doesn't make sense. From a technology aspect or a cool aspect, makes total sense, right? Those cars are super dope. You got a 360 parking. It drives itself. It's got computer. You can watch Netflix while you're driving. Super awesome. They're great. Some of the safety things, they still kind of run over people on accidents sometimes, but it's far safer than my car that doesn't do anything, right? It doesn't save me from anything. It'll just crash. And so they're not perfect, but there's lots of cool reasons to have one. But as far as the environment goes, it's a negative. And it's going to be a negative for a long time.
Right. Definitely going to be a negative. Just want to read this comment real quick from my boy Mike. He says, Russia, Saudi Arabia, and China are creating an alliance to downplay the American dollar, and Americans are worried about Kim Kardashian. Well, yeah, that's what I was trying to bring up to you. Thank you for that comment, Mike. But Ben, this is what I was trying to talk about earlier. Like Russia, Saudi Arabia, China, they did form it. I did see someone that they're coming together trying to go away from the American dollar. And I think you said they're going to start using the Chinese yuan. Yeah. But I'm not sure what's going on there. But what are your thoughts on that again?
But one of the reasons that they're getting away from the U.S. dollar is because under Joe Biden, the dollar has crashed with inflation. It's not worth as much anymore. And so they might use it as like a talking point of, the great evil of America, and we're going to stick it to the man, and we're not going to deal with them anymore. But really, it just makes fiscal sense. Like, it's not as nefarious as, you think it is. They just want to do a dollar that, makes more money for them. But obviously, it's not good for us. The less people that use the American dollar is worse for us economically. But, I mean, we're doing a perfectly good job of crushing our economy by ourselves. And so other countries, you know, doing the same thing by just wanting to do something that makes more sense is only smart on their part. So I don't think it's as much as like a slight against America as it's just a slight against our financial system that's getting crushed with inflation in very knowable ways.
How do you think America responds to that? I mean, Joe Biden is probably going to be out of office the next election. So what does the next president need to do, in your opinion, to counteract this, what's going on?
Well, I think the whole reason that we have a lot of these problems with Russia and China is because of our president. I mean, it's very telling that under Trump, almost no world-type war happened because everybody was worried about what Trump would do, and he told people all the time, you know, fuck around and find out. You know, I'll unleash terror on you. I will destroy your entire country like you've never seen before. I mean, Trump was the first president to go to North Korea, right? Went to North Korea and shook Rocket Man's hand and said, "What's up?" And then we didn't have any more problems. That was it. He said, like, "Oh, you're a real dude." He's like, "Yeah, I'll blow your country to bits." But we have Joe Biden. Nobody believes Joe Biden's going to do anything because he's not. He's not going to do anything. He's weak. He's retarded. Dude's always been dumb, right? He's never been a smart person, but now he's older and not a smart person. So people just do whatever they want and they can get away with anything. And so, of course, they're going to. You know, where people thought like, oh, under Trump, like we were the laughing stock of the world. We were not. People looked at Trump and said like, we're not going to mess with America right now. We're going to wait. We're going to wait for somebody else, right? No one was doing anything to America under Trump because they knew that we'd take care of business. And then you get Biden and all of a sudden, you know, first day, world starts going crazy. And so it's exactly how it happens. It's the same thing that you would do. If you were a house robber and you wanted to go rob a house and you saw that they had, you know, a pit bull inside, you go like, oh, maybe I'll skip. And then you see him take that pit bull to the vet and he's not there. Like, oh, now's the time, right? Now's the time. It's not, you don't have to be smart to do that. Like, oh, it's much safer to do that now, you know. You want to break into my house when I'm not here, you know, when some old person moves in here, not while I'm here. And so, you know, the world went to crap under Biden. It's going to continue to go under it. How we fix it, I mean, the reason why everything broke under Biden was because he went down a list and saw all the things that, you know, America accomplished under Trump or that Trump signed for, and he just did away with all of them. You know, it doesn't matter what it was. You know, he signed this executive order, I undo it. He created this rule, I undo it. He treated these people this way, I'm going to undo that. And he just did the opposite with predictable results. And so if you wanted to fix it, you just have to undo everything that Biden did and put it back. And we'd be, you know, way better off. It's literally that simple. Anything that he did, just stop it.
Wow, man, we're going into this back and forth game with these presidents, man. One undoing the other one undoing that. It doesn't look good.
If you know, when I think about, I am very much a conservative person, and I have a very much different lived life than you, right? We don't have the same parents. We didn't grow up in the same city. We don't look the same. I'm taller than you. I'm better looking than you. You know, all these different sort of things. But some things are very universal, right? Under Trump, I made a lot of money. My 401k did great. Gas prices were cheap. There was food everywhere. There wasn't a shortage of anything. We didn't have any foreign wars. Everything was great. Unemployment was low. Stock prices were high. Everybody was doing good across all metrics, race, age, gender, everything. But the problem was Trump said mean things. And he said mean things on Twitter. And he made people mad. Yeah. And so if someone making you mad ruins your life, he was the worst president in the world, right? It makes sense. If a guy's saying something that makes you mad, ruins your life is being ruined by this guy. But for the rest of us, things were great. Things were really great for the whole country. And so then you get these people that say, hey, this guy was terrible. You know, we're just going to do the opposite. We're going to say really nice things, but we're not going to fix anything. And then, you know, everything goes to crap. And so, you know, we got to get someone that's just going to do the opposite, be more sane, you know, and hope for the best. I don't know. It's crazy times. You know, some things seem very universal to me, what I think with logic, but, you know, emotions get involved. We all have emotions. I'm passionate about things, and I might react in a way that I shouldn't react, you know, because I'm overcome with emotions. But we try not to make, like, business decisions that way. You know, we make them based on, like, is this sound? Is this good policy? Is this going to benefit me? Not, you know, this feels right, or I hate this person, and so I want to make it really bad for them.
Right. Yeah, we definitely let the emotions take control, and it's not steering the ship of this country in the right way, in my opinion. We got a few more minutes, man. I did want to touch on this controversial topic. In your opinion, Ben, what is a woman?
Well, it depends on what you're asking. And so anyone that feels like a woman on one hand is a woman. But if you want to be entitled to something that's available to women, a woman is someone that's typically born with a uterus, has ovaries, has a woman's pelvis. On her birth certificate, it says she's a woman. She's typically able to bear children, etc. And so if you want to be a woman and dress in woman's clothes and say that makes you a woman, like, I'm all for it. Like, whatever makes you happy. But if you say that makes you a woman and now you can use the women's restroom, that's a different thing. Or you're a man that identifies as a woman and now you can go destroy women in sports, that's a different thing. And so it depends if we're coming down to like a preference.
But they're women though, man. If they identify as a woman, they got the surgery, they wear makeup, they wear the dresses, they do everything. They're a woman, so why can't they?
Yep.
Why can't they just use the restroom and do all that?
Chop off your female penis, right? Take hormones, do all these things. You're a woman. Like it's not that. It's not that at all. And I think that is something that is going to crash and burn the world over, because it's playing out to its logical conclusion right now, and it's so ridiculous that you have biological men that are now women of the year, or the woman athlete of the year is now a man. Or a guy just says, like, 4 minutes ago I'm a woman, then goes into a weightlifting competition, crushes all the women by 1,000,000%, and then they actually write that guy's name into the books as the record holder for all times. And it's gonna play itself out. And so what needs to happen, what I hope happens, is that more men join women's teams so they can beat all their records, and then the women just protest and don't play anymore. And it'll make it so the sport doesn't exist, and they'll have to make rules to fix it, or else they just, exploded. And so what I'd like to see is that every time one of those high school basketball, female teams plays a team with a man on it, they stop playing. And they go, oh, we're not going to play. And that's it. And then there's no game. And then you don't sell tickets. And then there's nobody to watch it. And the people selling food and drinks can't sell food and drinks. And it doesn't work anymore. And so then they have to decide, okay, well, are we going to keep men on women's teams because we want to and then have no sport, or do we actually want to have this sport? And I think the issue solves itself, but it takes like a lot of courage. And I'm not in a position to, protest. I'm not in a sport where I can be like, I'm going to sit out because I'm a man. But it's kind of something that women have to do. We can't solve this problem for them. They have to solve their own problem. And the only way to win is to not play. And so they just need to not play. And if they're not willing to do that, then it's kind of, we can't help you, right? Because us as men, like, we want to make sure, women are safe. We want to protect people and all these sort of things. But if the women won't start, there's nothing for us to do, right? We can't legislate. It's super easy. Stop playing. Oh, but it's my college shot. I've only got one shot. It's the last year. Well, what's important to you? That one last shot are women. If women aren't going to love each other more than anyone else, what are you supposed to do? And so women just need to stop playing. Like, that's it. I'm done. Or I'm not doing this. Or half the team stop playing, don't have a team anymore. And you have to sacrifice for things you believe in, right? I mean, that's the whole world. We're all here because of people sacrifice. We're here because people fought wars to sacrifice. We're here because people protested and stand up when, they're getting persecuted. We're here for people, with their religious convictions, that stood up and got killed for it. That's what we're here for. And so the women, they're vocal, they talk about it online, but there's enough of them that still think it's a good idea because it makes them feel like a good person to pretend that 6'5" dude isn't going to ruin their lives, in volleyball and concuss them, because that's exactly what happens. Or, no, I need to support this man that's fighting MMA that literally smashes girls' skulls because I am inclusive. They have to be real. They have to put themselves in that position, their daughters in that position, and tell me, do you want your daughter to fight that guy? Is that what your virtue is worth? You're going to put your daughter on the line to get, knowingly crushed. And so the women have to step up and do their job. And all I have to do is stop playing. We're not doing this anymore. But enough of them still will, because they want their shot, because they're happy, you know, to come in, you know, second place to a man so they can get their second place shot. But they're ruining the person that would have got third place that now gets fourth that doesn't get a shot. And so the women have to step up and say, we're not doing this. I'm not going to do this. Or do it and accept that, you know, you're going to lose every single time. Either way.
Either way. Absolutely, man. Yeah, because that whole way of thinking, man, it doesn't just stop at a man wanting to be a woman or a woman identified as a man. Right. I sent you a video the other day about a man who says he was 60 or something, identifying as a 30-year-old, you know, and if we use the same parameters about, you know, gender and all of that, we can't at the same time deny the parameters that would apply to someone identifying as a certain age, you know. So
it's really another thing that's a big distinction between like progressives and conservatives. And so if you tell me like, hey, is it okay for this guy to dress as a woman? Nobody cares. Across any party lines, nobody cares. If they do care, they're an ignorant bigot, right? They're excluded from everything. They don't count. And it's such a small part of the population. But then the next step of that, and then the next step are the ones that lead to the next and the next steps. And progressives aren't very good at figuring that out. So now we want to make sure this person is legally a woman on their birth certificate. Well, there's a problem with that. No, but you have to let them, because that's their identity, and that's how they feel. Okay, well, if it was just putting their name on a thing that said woman, that would be fine. But now they get privileges that are assigned only to women, and that's the problem. So now they get to get women's scholarships that are only for women. They get to take money from women. Now they get to go on the women's sports team and beat up the women at sports. Now they get, you know, female-only small business loans that are only allowed to females, and now they're taking things from females, right? And so it keeps on going and going and going and going, and then it becomes, this is a woman, and she goes to the doctor, and the doctor can't discriminate, so now he has to give her a pap smear because she's a woman. Well, she has a penis. You can't do that. So now she says to the doctor that he has to. Well, how do you? Right? Now he's insulting her. Now he's committing, you know, medical malpractice because he won't give a woman a pap smear, because he refuses to give a woman a pap smear. And where do you go with that? It's chaos, and it doesn't work. And so they don't understand that this is how it goes every single time with every single issue. Oh, we're going to legalize drugs. It's just marijuana. Who cares? Okay, well, what did they do next? Heroin. Now you get free heroin. Now you get free heroin needles in San Francisco. Now you can do heroin wherever you want. And it's like, you know, on one hand, like, should everyone be able to use marijuana? Probably. Who cares? Right? Who cares? Is it good for you? No. Is it the end of the world? Not even close. Alcohol is probably worse in so many ways. But is it good for you? No. And so would I vote to make it legal? No. But I probably wouldn't vote to make it illegal either. I just wouldn't vote for it because I don't want to be a part of that, right? It's more worse than good, but it's not terrible. But when you legalize drugs, you legalize drugs. And there's going to be a next one and a next one and a next one. Because at one point, you know, caffeine was legal. Everything was an illegal drug. And it just leads to more and more and more drugs. And as a society and as people, drugs are not good. You know, drugs that heal you are great. Drugs that we use recreationally to help us escape from society are not good for us. That's not what we should be doing, right? As a species, we are not supposed to escape from society to go somewhere else so we don't have to deal with our problems, right? There's lots of use cases, you know, like I'm a war vet, I have PTSD, it helps me relax. It makes me not think about, you know, all my buddies that died. Great. Love it. Perfect. All day long, you know, all day long. I hope that makes you feel so much better. But like, oh, I like to do it. I like to sit around and get high. That's not good. That's not the worst thing in the world, but that's not good for you, right? So we don't like to legislate things that are not good for people. But there's, you know, people have a right to fail. You know, it's legal doctrine. You can fail at life if you want to. You have the ability to do that, but it leads to other things, more disastrous things. So that's kind of how it goes.
My man said, please don't break my heart. I love coffee. Well, coffee's legal, bro. You're good to go with coffee, man. Yeah. But like Ben said, you know,
but you know what people legal, don't do? People typically don't rob people for money to buy coffee, right? And people don't go into prostitution so they can pay for their espresso. And people don't go, like, you know, they don't get hopped up on coffee and then go kill their wife or something, you know.
Right.
So that's kind of the difference.
That's a small difference, but a significant difference. Significant difference. Just a few more questions for you, Ben. This whole woke ideology mindset that's just taken the USA by storm. Now, granted, this is not going on all over the world. Maybe in the UK and Canada.
It can only go on in places where life is so good that you have to invent problems.
You have to make problems.
Yeah, you have to make problems because anywhere where there's real problems, you have to deal with problems. When there's not problems, but things don't go good, you have to invent a problem, and that's why something is going wrong because of some imaginary, boogeyman that's coming to get you. And it's very easy to see that the most privileged are the first people to be the biggest victims. Yeah. And so there's less poverty today than there has ever been at any point ever in the entire civilization, right? There's more wealthy people now than ever at any time. There's more food. There's more access to food. There's more everything now than there ever has been. Times are objectively better now than ever by any metric, anywhere, right. ever. Easy, period, done. But we also have more victims ever. And it's very inverse. The better it is, the more victims you have. It's a very knowable thing, and so it's based on nonsense. It's all garbage. And so, it really starts, we see it very early in California here. It's taught in schools. They get a lot of the CRT. They get a lot of, they gloss over a lot of problems but highlight other ones. We make people feel bad for their skin color. We tell black people, that they don't need an ID to vote because they're too dumb to get an ID. So, voter ID is a big thing. And they say that it's too hard for someone of color to get an ID, so they shouldn't have to show one. And to me, that's incredibly dehumanizing to tell you as a black dude, like, it's all right, man, you're too dumb to get an ID. But for me, I'm smart enough to do it, right? It's the most ridiculous concept ever. We all know where the DMV is. It's not a thing. But they say things, little racist remarks like that from the left all the time that make people think that, oh, yeah, there's a problem. Like, I can't get ahead. It's not my fault. It's the invisible hand of racism. And they really limit people's abilities to, conquer. Because me as a white dude, like, I can't really claim the concept of racism as an overarching theme in my life. And so if I fail at something, it means I failed. I failed at something. Maybe it was unfair and I failed. But I can't claim racism for it. But somebody of color, they could always claim racism for it, especially when they're told that everything is racist and you can't get ahead because of racists. And so when they have a bad business idea and it fails, well, it's racism, right? When they can't pay their bills because they got cut for their job, well, you got fired because they're racist, right? It's because of your color. And so they grow up with this whole victim mentality and they join the woke club, and everything is because of the invisible boogeyman. It has nothing to do with you. You're not responsible. Because if you're not responsible, it's not your fault. It's somebody else's fault. And that's very empowering, right? I'm perfect. I'm good at everything. If only, these racists didn't exist, I'd be better off and I'd be able to do it. And so now your job is to fight the racists, to make it easier for yourself. And now, because of racism, my life is so hard, you owe me reparations and a free house. And because I'm a person of color and I paid student loans, well, now I need free student loans. You got to pay for these now. And so it just becomes a whole ideology. But it starts in the schools at very young ages. They're taught all this nonsense. And some people buy into it. Their parents buy into it, so it's what they're taught as well. I'm conservative. My parents were pretty conservative, but I was born into a blue state. That's why I'm conservative. I see all around me what, the left brings. I'm like, I don't want that. But some people think it's the right thing to do, and, it's craziness. It's craziness. People, I don't think they understand. I think we're generally, we're very selfish as human beings, right? We want to be safe. We want all this stuff. We don't really care who it hurts. And if you can convince people that you can give it to them, then they're going to take it. And so we have a whole lot of victims running around that the only boogeyman in their life is their own choices. But they want to blame it on somebody else because that's easier than self-reflecting.
Well said, man. Well said. Yeah. All of that. Great stuff, man. Great stuff. We got a few minutes. I wanted to ask about how is BJJ going for you these days?
It's going pretty good. I mean, my battles now are with injuries, and so they're not like acute injuries, but I have a knee where the ACL is halfway torn, and so it's going good for now. But eventually, that's going to let out, and then it's another surgery. And so I just got done getting my labrum and my rotator cuff repaired. about a year and a half ago, and so that's doing pretty good now. So now I'm training harder to go back into competing. But jiu-jitsu is popping in Southern California. I mean, I think we're the mecca of jiu-jitsu all over the world. I think it's pretty well known. And so we've got all the best people here. It doesn't mean there's not good people everywhere, but a lot of them are over here. And so our competition is super tough, lots of schools. You know, COVID was pretty bad for jiu-jitsu, but, you know, things are perfectly fine right now. Attendance, you know, you go back into class and 60 people are there again instead of, you know, 4 or 5 like it was during the pandemic. And so things are going good. Jiu-jitsu is great. You know, it's still one of my favorite things to do. Have fun doing it all the time. You know, lots of friends. You know, it's my social hour. It's my exercise. You know, it's wonderful.
What advice would you give a young person? Say you have a son and he says, Dad, I want to really, really make it in this world. I really want to be successful. What should I do? Where should I go? What book should I read? What should I do to be a real successful person in America?
I think that the main thing that distinguishes successful people from unsuccessful people is successful people have gratitude. And they probably got that gratitude from a young age, having to do work and getting the rewards of their labor. And so they understood they had to work to get something. If you're given something for nothing, you really lose the opportunity to value work. And so we need people to do things and not be given things. And so that might be, you know, working around the house, you know, doing chores or something like that, or volunteering your time somewhere. You know, even us as, you know, as kids going to church, you know, we would go volunteer places all the time and feed people or clean something or help someone with their home or something like that. And so you kind of understand that work is necessary and you don't get anything for free. And if you don't do that, you don't get anything. You know, life is unfair regardless of what color you are, if you're rich, if you're poor, if you're able-bodied, if you're handicapped. It doesn't matter. Life is hard. And none of us escape, you know, unscarred by the rigors of life and the pain of life, even from a young age. But gratitude, the willingness, you know, to do work, to get something for it, and to be happy doing that is, you know, I think what distinguishes people that, you know, are ultimately successful than not. And success doesn't even have to be monetarily, right? There's people that are super successful on their small little farm with their kids that love them and their family, and they break their back every day to barely make it, and they're way happier than, you know, the richest CEOs. You know, they have a whole different set of problems and a whole different set of, you know, things that make them happy. And so I think, you know, statistically, having gratitude is super high on the list. Not being enabled, you know, not being a spoiled brat. And so it's, you know, I don't have kids yet, and so I don't know the exact mechanisms to foster that. But I know for a fact that, you know, gratitude is a super important one. And you can tell all these miserable people that are advocating for all these policies that, you know, are garbage, they don't have gratitude. They're extremely selfish. They're very self-centered, and they're entitled, and they're nasty in their entitledness. You know, you have to give me your stuff or else. You have to give me your stuff or I will hurt you. You know, that's their attitude. You have to make life easier for me or I will burn down your house. Not gratitude, right? People that are thankful for what they have. But you can't just make someone thankful for what they have. You know, that has to be developed. And I don't know the exact, I'm sure there's, you know, tons of books on and stuff like that. But, you know, gratitude is the big difference. And you can even tell somebody, you know, someone that you like and someone you don't, by if they're grateful for what they have. If they're happy, you know, based on what they've done, you know, they're working towards something, you know, they're thankful for the gifts that they've been given. Because, I mean, on the spiritual level, none of us are deserving of anything, right? We're all horrible, disgusting, dark people, and we're not worthy of anything, but, you know, by the grace of God, we're given it. And so most religious, almost any religion, you know, touches on that. And so we can understand that. Those of us that were born into religion, we can touch that a little bit without even having to get too deep into it. But there's something to be said, you know, for hard work and being thankful that makes somebody more successful later in life, whether that's, you know, monetarily or just in their heart.
Thank you, man. Thank you for all that. Well said, bro. Do you have any question for me before we go?
No, man, I watch your Instagram every day. I see you doing jiu-jitsu. I love your inspirational quotes that you put with Roland. You know, you're arm barring someone, and it's like, oh, give love back or something. Like, man, you're killing that dude, saying something funny. It's super great. No, you're doing good. I appreciate how we met, you know, several years ago. You know, you've always been a super cool dude. I like watching your channel. I like seeing everything you're doing. And, you know, I wish for you continued success.
Bro, I appreciate you, man, very much. And thank you for being on my show today. will you please, if you like, just shout out your Instagram. I don't know if you have a YouTube channel, or maybe someone wants to get in contact you and maybe rebuttal you from your crazy ideas.
Yeah, no problems. All I've got is, my only presence is really the Instagram. So it's my name, Ben Walker BJJ. So at Ben Walker BJJ. I post political stuff that I think is important on my Instagram all the time. I like to make fun of the left all the time. I've got friends on both sides. We make fun of each other. No big deal. As long as, you're not trying to take my stuff, any opinion is fine. But as soon as you want to, take my house or take my rights or take my money, that's when it comes, to fighting words. And so as long as it's not that, like, hey, believe whatever you want, man. Whatever makes you happy is totally cool. But when it starts, taking away from me and taking food out of my mouth, that's when we got a problem. But Ben Walker BJJ, that's all it is. That's my only really presence, no biggie.
Bro, you are a big deal, man. You are the brightest star in Southern California. Man.
I appreciate it.
God bless you, man. If you're watching this on YouTube, please consider giving this a like, subscribe, leave a comment below. Thank you, everybody, for watching. If you're not following me, follow me. If you're not following Ben, follow Ben right now. Great guy. Ben, God bless you, man. And thank you for being on. And we'll talk soon, okay?
All right, bro. You too. Take it easy.
You too, man. Bye-bye.